in um, Tuesday. Um, I noticed that everything that's going on based on from the Tech Louisville program. I realized that our students, if you're not familiar with the Tech Louisville program, which I'll explain a little bit about the program, that we serve individuals that reside mostly in West Louisville, in the South End location in the city of Louisville. And a lot of our students are people of color. So I realized that if I'm feeling some type of way about the issues that are going on in society, for one, with the whole COVID pandemic, and then two, going on with police brutality, protesting across this nation, along with the city. And by me being an employer or an employee of the Tech Louisville program, I'm imagining how the students are feeling, especially individuals that are residing in these communities that protesting and riotings are happening. So this week, we canceled two of our classes for Tech Louisville along with Code Louisville. And just, for us just to reflect, think about all this that's happening. And I just wanted to open this this forum or this discussion group out for people that it serves. And people such as Damon Cobble, which I'll introduce to you all very shortly, and about the work that he does. But more than anything, with this discussion dialogue, I want this to be something that we open up to the community to say, hey, we are here for you. We're just not an organization or a tech organization or a work program. This to get you in and get you connected with a job. We look more to you than just a number. We look at you all holistically, that you are a human being. And for most of you all, you are people that has been kissed by the sun. And these are people of color right now that are being through the system, that we're being not only killing amongst ourselves, but we're getting killed by police brutality. And so in a host of other factors that goes on within racism, within this city and within this culture or this country and community, and also within the workforce as well, and especially within the tech industry. And one of the things that with this is that, how are you all feeling? Where are you at mentally through all this? And like I mentioned, that's why I have Damon here from Minority Mental Health Project that's going to talk to you all about his program and the resources that he served to the community. And also, I want to give a shout out to our community outreach group that we have that's affiliated with the Tech Louisville program, and that's through Funky Pixel with Martin Lindsay and Raydon Long. So I just want to give the floor over to Damon for him to briefly, or not briefly, but take your time to present on the services that you provide for the community such a time as this. And from there, I'll allow Raydon to talk about some of the questions, the Q&A things that you all may have, and I'll give her the floor to do that. And anybody on here that is outside of Tech Louisville that you have, or you affiliated with any program that you would like to share, or resources that you can share to the people that may need it. And actually, I'll start off first. If you all aren't aware of the Tech Louisville program, we are a program that is affiliated with the Advancing Cities Grant, that we help individuals that have been, as I mentioned earlier briefly, within all of the West End or West Louisville, along with the South End, downtown, in the Shively location, that we offer free training through Google, that we offer IT tech training, technical support training for individuals that are low income and reside in those areas. So if you know of anyone, or if you're not a part of Tech Louisville right now, and just on here just to hear about the program, please sign up and register. It's a great program that we will offer you. Once you complete the training, we will get you connected with IT tech jobs. Especially, pretty much this program is very needed within the community because, one, overall, within the tech world or tech industry, African Americans and people of color are presented, our representation is at 2% or less, barely at 2%. 1.8% of the tech industry consists of people of color. And, that's why our programs like Tech Louisville exist, is to get us in the tech industry, to get a job, to have those resources so that individuals can take care of their family, that, individuals that come or that get into the tech or these tech programs don't look like us, don't look like the people that they serve, but that other people utilize those resources, and also, that can come into highly populated African American communities and pretty much can take over, such as like gentrification. Hopefully, something that we can discuss about later, and a host of other things that we provide with this Advancing Cities grant, such as housing, financial literacy, education, a host of other things. So at the end, towards the end of today's discussion, if you are affiliated with any organization outside of Tech Louisville, or you're affiliated with the Advancing Cities grant, I would like for you to talk about the services that you all provide to give out and to share throughout the community. Thank you all. And I'll hand the floor over to Damon. Or Brian, do you want to mention anything about Code Louisville very briefly for the Code Louisville people?
Yeah, sure. I can throw it out there real quick. If anyone's not familiar with Code Louisville, it's a program for anyone who's a resident of 7 counties around us to participate and learn to be a software developer. Free to participate. Sign up now because there may be a little wait list to get in, but we're really just trying to democratize learning tech skills between Code Louisville and Tech Louisville, and hopefully offer opportunities and pathways for everybody. I think that's pretty much all I had to say. I think you covered it far better than I could have, Rob. So, Damon, why don't you take it away?
I appreciate the invite, and to start out, let me just kind of give you all a backstory of my own life that led to the Minority Mental Health Project Initiative. I'm a Louisvillian. I grew up in the West End of Louisville, 1708 South 38th Street, Building 46. And that is Southwick, also known as Lane Homes. Right now is it's called Park Duval. And so growing up in Southwick in the 70s and 80s, I grew up in a community, as some of you may already know, that was inundated with drugs, gangs. My mother was a victim of domestic violence. I couldn't read or write coming out of high school when I graduated in 1990. So those are just some of the systemic factors that affected me as a young Black man growing up in the West End of Louisville. And so I finally got to an age to where I wanted to tackle those, those struggles, that I felt like would have a great effect and can have a good or bad effect on my children. And so I put myself in therapy for 10 years. And I do have depression, major depression. I used to be suicidal. But growing up in a community systemically with all the socioeconomic issues, the racial factors that really impacted me as a young Black man growing up and not knowing who I was and whose I was. My father, my biological father, used to beat my mom and, pistol whipped her in my presence one time. So that just really messed me up as a young man. And so last year I had, some friends of mine come to me and it's like, hey, you need to do this, the community needs you or whatnot. And of course I gave some resistance, but I truly believe this is my calling. I'm very passionate about it. And we started the Minority Mental Health Project in June of 2019. Now, the goal of the Minority Mental Health Project is specifically to address gaps in the research when it comes to underserved communities receiving therapeutic services. As I continue to pursue my higher education, I delved into the research and identified 3 specific gaps that are barriers to the Black community receiving therapeutic services. And that is accessibility, affordability, and cultural responsibility. And how is the Minority Mental Health Project going to address these 3 gaps? Accessibility, we have partnered with faith and non-faith organizations, 10 partners, whether they supporting us monetary or they just supporting us through other means. They have partnered with us to address the accessibility. And more specifically, we have 6 churches that have came on board that have partnered with us to where we're going to be providing services through these 6 faith entities as COVID regulations are lifted. So what happened a few months ago, right before COVID, we were scheduled to launch our initiative to the community. The governor was coming down to support us. I was in direct contact with the governor's assistant, and COVID just put a stop to everything because we did not at the time have telehealth services as part of our infrastructure, as part of our plan, maybe down the road, but not immediately. And so once COVID hit, we just kind of looked at our infrastructure and, we was like, hey man, we need to tweak some things. We need to provide telehealth services. And that's where I reached out to Mr. Moore to see if there was any connections there to get some laptops for our therapists to be able to provide telehealth services. And so let me go back to the 3 gaps. That is addressing accessibility. Any clinician that has the desire to work on this project, we're asking them to come to the West End and provide services through our partners. Instead of our community having to go out east or having to catch the TART, to a place that they may not even be familiar with to receive services from someone who looks like them. We want to bring those services to the West End. And so that's addressing the accessibility. The cultural responsibility, we are addressing that by being one of the first organizations. We are the first organization that's going to be trainers on the Dr. Stephen Nipley's model, racial trauma treatment model. So all therapists, everyone that works under this initiative, we're going to train them on racial trauma treatment model. And that's having to address the cultural responsibility. You don't have to be African American, you can be Hispanic, you can be white, but if you want to come work under the Minority Mental Health Project, this is a mandated training that we're going to be providing to them under certain conditions. And that's partially how we're going to address the cultural responsibility. Everything that we do, we want to look at root causes. We just don't want to look at issues on the surface and put a Band-Aid over these issues. And one of the main reasons we wanted to implement this program, not only to address those 3 gaps, but we also want to look at it, from a root cause standpoint. Let's get down to generational trauma. Let's get down to vicarious trauma. We have to really get down to the root cause and address these issues systemically and holistically. And so that's going to be our focus, and that's going to help us address the cultural responsibility piece. Now, the financial, the affordability, we've been seeking out funding to address the co-pays, to address even providing maybe free services to our community. And we're in the process of soliciting funding funds to address the affordability. And so if y'all know of any sources, that would be great. So those are the 3 gaps in the research that we are intentionally and purposefully addressing when it comes to the underserved communities receiving therapeutic services. And so with that being said, we have implemented telehealth services, thanks to Robert Moore. So our therapists, they have their laptops, and we will be launching our services on Monday, right after our board meeting on Monday evening. And so we're going to be releasing an infomercial that was very well put together that's going to introduce the Minority Mental Health Project to the community. And we're going to be very aggressive. We're going to be very aggressive. We're going to be very intentional. And not a lot of people may not like, our method, but that's okay, because we want to go against the grain. We can't continue to sit back and allow anyone to come and treat our families without addressing the systemic issues and the generational trauma that has plagued our community for years. And if that means, systems of power, yes, we want to get involved in policy. We're not just wanting to get involved with providing direct services, but we want to get involved in policy change. And our methods are going to be non-traditional, untraditional, whichever term you want to use. We're going to be very intentional and very purposeful. So some people may not like our presentation. Some people may not like our fortitude, but we have to do this to address the systemic issues mental issues that our community has been struggling with for years. And so that is the backdrop, the backstory of me. That is the purpose of the Minority Mental Health Project. And also, let me just name a few of our partners. We just solidified a partner with the Urban League a couple of weeks ago. We have 6 churches. And Ms. Deborah, if I miss any of the churches, please chime in. We have Little Flock Missionary Baptist Church. If you've been keeping up with the news, Little Flock was shot up yesterday during the riots. And so Reverend Bernard Creighton is one of our biggest partners. And Reverend Bernard Creighton is not only a partner, he is a board member of the Minority Mental Health Project. We have Elam Baptist Church. We have Hewlett Temple. We have Joshua Tabernacle. We have, who else, Ms. Deborah, I'm missing 2? Well, with 2 more. Oakland Baptist Church, yes. And so we have a total of 6 churches, which are our faith partners. We have the Urban League, it's a non-faith partner. And not only that, we also collaborated with the Hope Wellness Center, which is in the Louds Mall. So we're going to be providing services through the Hope Wellness Center, also through the Louds Mall. Wanted to work on this project. They're more than welcome to come and work on this project, but it's going to have to be on our terms. And it's going to have to be with our purpose and our mission at the forefront, because we can't allow anything to get by in terms of systemically and holistically what our families are struggling with.
Thank you, Damon, for sharing the information and the resources. Does anyone have any questions for Damon?
I have a question, Damon.
Okay.
On that political front, which politicians did you reach out to, and which politicians do you want to reach out to? I mean, have you reached out to? Do you want to reach out to?
Well, to be clear, we're not involved with any political decisions, but
you
we
were
do
talking
have
about policy, and so that's what I'm saying.
Policy, yes.
Which ones do you want? Is what I'm asking.
Well, I've been in touch with my cousin, who is Charles Booker. I'm already in conversation with him in terms of policy and presenting some policy to the legislature in Frankfurt. But if you have any additional resources, I've been in touch with John Yorman's office, and so so if you have any additional resources or specific contacts where we can get involved in those policy conversations, we definitely welcome that.
Okay.
I have a question. Do you have a flyer or some type of a website link that we could refer customers? We work with customers in terms of training and employment, but a lot can't remain employed because there's some underlying conditions. And so we've seen a lot of that since latter part of 2019 and 2020. So if you would share or leave so that we can have a way to research and look at what you do and what resources you have. If you could talk about that a little bit, that would be helpful.
Talk about what specifically?
In terms of your services, what exactly
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, we do have a website, www.mmhplou.com. That's www.mmhplou.com. You can go to their website if you know of any community member who's interested in services. They can go to their website and fill out a service inquiry, and it's a very basic form, and then we will respond to that email within 48 to 72 hours. And well, right now, currently, we provide individual and family therapy. We're also doing our supervision under Dr. Nifley's racial trauma treatment model. So upon us completing that racial trauma training supervision, we will be also offering this training to the community as well.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just want to add that, you know, I'm, like Damon said, I am the secretary, but we're also partners in what I do. Damon is the therapist for the program that I oversee, which is the Pivot to Peace program, which is a program for those living in Jefferson County who have been injured by gunshot, stabbing, or who are living at a high risk of violence. And I supervise like 8 caseworkers who provide help them to navigate the community and identify wraparound services. And so Damon is also the therapist for my program.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Could you talk a little bit about, I know you said like you're seeking funding to make services free, and then you're working on copays and stuff like that. I guess, could you talk a little bit more about like what, you used an acronym when we talked the other day that I wasn't familiar with. It was like five different types of insurance,
Yeah,
or whatever, you know, things like that people might use to better access to your services.
Right. And so initially, when we were going to launch right before COVID, the goal was to make these services free to the community. But COVID has definitely impacted our funding sources. So once COVID hit, that kind of put a stop to a lot of our funding opportunities. I was in conversation with some great business partners here in the community, but right now that is on hold. And so and also I failed to mention this also. When we were going to launch a couple of months ago, one of our biggest partners, the University of Louisville Diversity and Inclusion Department, and they have helped us out substantially. They support us wholeheartedly, and they're going to be doing our analytics. So whatever program that we do or we implement, we have the major university who's going to help us put tools in place to measure every program that we have, so we're looking at long term. We're not just looking at temporary. We're looking at long term. We want sustainability. But back to your question in regards to the insurance, the goal was to make these services free. But since then, we've had to shift, due to COVID, to make these services available through telehealth, which means we had to tweak our infrastructure. So right now, we're not able to make these services free. Insured under Medicaid or one of the 5 MCOs, and we're going to waive their copays. And so we will be billing insurance, but we also will be waiving copays for the poor families who may have $15, $20 copay in order to see us. So we're going to waive those copays. And then once the restrictions are lifted from COVID, then we're going to go back to the palette that we're going to launch. And we're going to launch this palette, which will make the services free through the palette, because we want to measure this and see if the community is going to really take advantage of these services, with that financial piece totally being taken out of the way.
Damon, I have a question. It took you a while for your therapy, personally. How long do you anticipate, or is there a timeline for someone, sort of an expectancy that you would be involved with to help someone recover from brokenness?
Now, can you clarify the inquisition, please?
Like, there's definitely levels to trauma within a person. So I was just curious how long the program lasts for a person.
Are you speaking of the pilot? Or are you speaking of what we can get ready to implement now? Because those two different programs. Have you?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with either. So I guess I'm just curious, just as a general question, do you, for the mental health, like for a holistic success within a person, would you, is there any cap on the amount of time it takes to get there, I guess?
No, I mean, if you speak to any therapist and if they put a time frame on healing, then I will question their practice. You know, I don't think there's any time frame that you can put on a specific person healing or to cope, to deal with whatever adverse challenges that they're faced with. So if you run into anyone who's putting a time frame saying that they can have you healed within 10 weeks or 12 weeks, I would probably not go that direction. And so it's all individual based. You know, it all depends on the intensity. It all depends on how deep you want to. If you really are, you really getting down to the root causes. You can't put a 10-week or 12-week. You're talking about over 400 years of adverse challenges for our community. So that's not going to be healed within 10 weeks or 12 weeks. So no, there is not going to be a cap.
All right, thanks.
And just for the sake of disclosure, and I don't mind sharing this, you know, Miss Deborah may get on me for this. She keeps me in check, but you know, I'm out of pocket. You know, I will work my full-time job to make sure our families are getting served. I would do that. So I'm not going to allow the lack of funding or anything else be a barrier to this program helping our community. Funding is good. Funding is definitely needed, but I refuse to let that be a stopping point for me.
Anyone else have questions for Damon or about the Minority Mental Health Project? Well, I'd say, you know, what Rob was getting to earlier, if you all have other resources that you all want to share, you know, something else you're familiar with, you know, anything to help the community out, feel free to, you know, unmute yourself and share something or put it in the chat.
Yeah, I think, Brian, I think at this point, I believe that Ray Don from
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll shut up and let you take over.
I guess this is the I guess the moment of time for individuals that want to express I guess themselves about what's going on in the community, you know, with COVID, to the protesting and racism, and how it's impacting your communities along with yourself as well. And I know that Ray Don, you had some questions involving within the tech world as well. So is a mix? Am I correct or wrong? It's a mixture of both. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Hello, everyone. I would have to say, well, first of all, I'm sorry, let me introduce myself. I am the Digital Inclusion Coordinator for Louisville Metro Housing Authority. So with digital inclusion, what we're finding out is our main focus is connectivity, getting people devices, as well as low-cost internet. And what we're finding out is a lot of times people aren't aware that these resources are available to them. And unfortunately, when COVID hit, that was during a time of need where people actually needed low-cost internet. They needed those devices. So we are here, myself and our partner with Louisville Metro, Civic Innovation Team, Ricky Santiago. We are all here to help you all get signed up for low-cost internet, also get you connected, getting you those devices so that you can to eventually, you know, get jobs. One point I will bring up that I found from previous friends as well as colleagues was I believe Microsoft had came up with a program to implement where people could get certifications, but they somehow the miscommunication came about. People weren't able to actually get the links to actually sign up to get those certifications to again get those technical jobs. So I don't know if we have anybody here from Microsoft or Kentucky Works or that can help us could give us more feedback on that and what happened. Because, I mean, people were reaching out and saying, well, Donna, I applied for this program, but I haven't heard back. So that was a concern.
And you referenced
Ray Don.
your Lou program, correct?
Yes.
Hi, Ray Don. This is Zakia, and I just realized I didn't introduce myself the first time I spoke. I'm Zakia Raymore. I serve as the operations manager for the Kentucky Manufacturing Career Center and the Career Center at NEA location. Just recently, we had a training yesterday that, along with our supportive services, which includes money for auto repair, child care. The list is pretty extensive now. Auto insurance. We are now getting ready to begin to provide devices, desktops, laptops, those kinds of things for people to come and get if their training is 3 weeks or longer. And then once they successfully complete, the device is theirs. And I think that's a huge, huge thing for our community. And so I just wanted you all to know that we're still working out the kinks, but it is on its way. So I'll be happy to leave my email address in the chat if you guys want to talk more and keep you in the loop about how we progress through this.
Zakia, this is Ricky. If we could connect offline, maybe tomorrow or next week, I would love to learn more about that. I think that is a fantastic progress for Kentucky Works.
I'll be more than happy to.
Hey, can I chime in on that? I'm not sure if this is relevant to what Ray Don is speaking of, but I think it's very important that we underscore the digital divide gap. We have to speak of the digital divide gap. I was on the phone, I made a call to Spectrum today about this specific issue, and I'm hoping that one of their business partners will reach with is when the provisional internet services are cut off in the next 2 or 3 months, when COVID restrictions are lifted. Because if some of you don't know, right now they're giving free internet services to our families. My concern is once that is lifted, and these poor families are not going to be able to pay this monthly bill, that is going to impact the continuity of care, especially if these families are receiving telehealth services.
Absolutely.
And so they're going to compound the problem. They're going to compound the problem. And so I'm hoping that if you all have a connection, or maybe they'll call me back, but we have to address this digital gap, because if they cut these families off who's receiving telehealth services, you're looking at additional stress on these families. And then the support that they had around them in regards to therapeutic services is cut off. And so we need to address the digital gap as well.
So, hello everyone. My name is Ricky Santiago. I'm the Digital Inclusion Officer for the Office for Civic Innovation and Technology of Louisville Metro. Yes, Damon, that is a very big concern of mine. This is something that we've been having conversations with the FCC through Next Century Cities for companies and providers to re-up their Keeping America Connected pledge, which is how they are providing the free internet. I think this has been an issue before COVID-19. Just to give you some ballpark numbers, 53,000 households in Louisville do not have access to fixed internet. And this is constant, reliable internet, right? that you have in the home. And we've done some great progress with that, but we certainly need more help, right? One guy going back to school fairs does not impact the community. It's just a drop in the bucket. We need an army of people that are trained on low cost internet in order to make a significant change. One of the things that I have been advising the organizations that work with me that have placed their folks on this free internet is to be aware and keep track of when the service is over, or follow up with the family so that they can move them over to the low cost internet. Now, with AT&T, it's not going to be an issue because what AT&T is doing, they're just expanding on their low cost internet. So if you signed up to the AT&T program, it'll be low cost from that point on. But for Spectrum, so for those families, we need to come up with solutions and a little bit of hand holding to get them over to the low income program. And
Delaney with Voc Rehab, and sorry, a few minutes ago I was trying to ask a couple questions, but I wanted to mention something and also follow up with a couple of points. So is you all have mentioned the low cost technology services such as providing computers or internet service has been of concern for some of the clients we serve for sure too. I know about the time COVID hit, JCTC was providing computers to their students. And I did hear for sure the programs like through Spectrum that they were providing. But is there any way to get copies of this information through, like what you all were providing and saying, such as not just the low cost AT&T option, but the other services that you are providing? Was it Raygon from the Louisville housing?
so I certainly have flyers that include the programs, both Spectrums and AT&T. And also, I can also advise on different programs that are not Spectrum and AT&T, for example, through providers like PCs for People. They have low-income hotspot services where the client purchases a hotspot, and then the client has the hotspot for $10 a month, which is considerably low cost rather than going through a regular provider. So, yeah, if you're interested, I left my email in the chat. Connect with me. I have those flyers up and ready to go. It does take a little bit of training, so if we can meet afterwards so I can kind of walk you through how it's supposed to look.
I'm actually had to call in on the line because I'm having technical problems with my Zoom at the moment. Is there any way that can be emailed to me, and maybe we can even schedule a time to correspond if need be?
Sure, I'll connect with Rob or Ray and get your information. Yep.
Excellent. I don't know if they even have my email address. That's why I was going to offer to go ahead and give it to you.
Okay.
It's Maggie, MAGGIE .Delaney, DELANEY @KY.gov. And I apologize, but I've got our IT people checking in with me tomorrow about why the Zoom wouldn't update itself.
And Maggie, just to kind of chime in, with what Ricky had stated as well,
Sure.
on the Louisville Metro Housing Authority, we offer those services for public housing as well as Section 8 in those scattered sites as well.
Wonderful. Yes. And when you were started talking, that's what I was going to say or ask. And then like a couple other people spoke and I'm like, okay, eventually I'll get to say something. So please forgive me.
Oh, it's no worries at all. But we will definitely get that information over to you.
I appreciate it because we serve people of all kinds of disabilities, you know, getting them prepared for college and or various forms of employment. And a lot of them, yes, they do receive either SSI and or disability. Others do not. So we get the whole gamut.
Awesome. Well, like I mentioned, that's what we're here for, is to definitely bridge that digital gap. We've got to.
Great.
Yes, ma'am.
Great. And I can share this with my coworkers as well, which I think will be very beneficial.
Absolutely. Please do. Does anyone have any questions as far as digital inclusion and what we can do in the community as far as bridging the digital gap?
Will you share your information in the chat?
Yes, ma'am, will do.
Thank you.
I would love for everybody to, on this call, at least sit with for us for 30 minutes to learn how to, you know, connect people to the internet.
Sure.
So a Tech Louisville participant raised a question through text. Can our classmates help facilitate families making the transition from free to low cost internet in that program? He said it's going. Has that been addressed?
So the program that is providing the free internet right now is going to, it has not been re-upped. So, you know, the clock's ticking there. However, we can help transition families into the low income plans that the providers have. And yeah, Tech Louisville, you know, will be great at, and, you know, we currently have, so Backside Learning Center, Youth Build, LMHA, obviously, and South Louisville Community Centers have all signed up families for the free income program. They signed up about 60 families. So helping them expand their capacity to track this and getting them into the low income plans would be greatly welcome.
So I have a question, and I guess this is for more of for those in the tech industry. With everything that's going on with COVID and the protesting and rioting, how is that impacting and affecting marginalized communities, especially those within the African-American communities?
And right here, my name is Joe Franklin, and I'm a technology recruiter. I work for a company called Tech Systems here in Louisville. We actually have a international presence, and we partner with over 80% of the Fortune 500 companies. I want to just simply say that the biggest form of what I would deem to be oppression, or the biggest piece, the biggest indicator that could showcase stagnation, would be to leave Black and brown people behind in the digital world. So what that means is that a lot of people are advocating for diversity and inclusion and representation within technology, but because so many people don't really know what they don't know, they don't understand that effect of leaving us at a simple 2% representation or 3% representation would immensely leave us behind in the next 100 years, to a point where we're not afforded opportunities, the opportunities that we're actually afforded right now. So in the midst of all of this, like so much of us, like the midst of the police brutality, let me be specific. Police brutality, you know, a lot of times, like we'll go over like rights in the humanities sector, just keeping people healthy, and that is so important, because you need people to feel, you know, like they're valued on this earth. Like you need people to actually feel vital in the sense of, like, you know, having their health. But what needs to be addressed more explicitly is the technology sector. And interestingly enough, you start to see organizations or like big companies speak out. No one, I don't think any company made a stance quite like Nike, and that's what we expect, right? Because like Nike, like they are, they are definitely their success has been in high correlation, like due to the culture, right? Like they're like Black people have led to an immense amount of success with Nike, and so we can't refute that. But then you see organizations like Netflix speak out, and that was interesting because it's like, all right, now if Netflix is speaking out, where are the other founders? Like, where are the other CEOs at these technological companies? Is this going to be a trend? And the scariest piece of all of that for me as a Black man is understanding that, as a Black man that actually understands like where technology is headed and the importance of it, is that we still don't have like those voices advocating for us on the technological front. And that in itself is so it it's something, it's paralyzing. I'll just say that it's paralyzing because I know that if we don't act now, then everything that we don't cover within like the next 5 to 10 years is like, that means like there will be exponential, like an exponential divide as opposed to just incremental based on the actual years in place, or maybe we didn't gain any traction or get ahead. So as this pertains to actual opportunity within the technological sector, there's a lot of revenue out here in order to help individuals from underrepresented communities like gain these skills, but there has to be way more buy-in, actual man hours, like people devoting like their actual skills and like volunteering. Like there needs to be way more of that on the human capital front, in order to get people really skilled, upskilled, and reskilled in the technological sector. And then we need to like continue to push towards like these major investors, these VCs, Silicon Valley, like these organizations, to really understand that we need to be represented within that. Because if not, like that gap, that wealth disparity that's already in place right now is just going to be far greater moving forward. So I said a lot within that, but if there's anything that was unclear, please let me know and I can address it again.
Just if I may, and this is my opinion, this is not the opinion of Louisville Metro government. Let me just say that outright. I do believe that how else do you explain the digital divide, right?
Yep.
How else do you explain digital redlining, right? And that has been something I have struggled with in my position, as like understanding that if tech companies want more diversity and representation of Black and brown tech professionals, why are you not investing then in digital inclusion, right? Because the exposure to technology is the first step to becoming a tech professional, right? You cannot expect a Black and brown child to be a tech professional if never throughout his school age instruction he's never been exposed to technology, right? He doesn't have to, they don't have technology at home. So how do you do that? So that's something that I've struggled with, is like, okay, the Netflix of the world, the Amazons of the world, the Microsofts of the world, you have created the market necessity for computers, and you're leaving people behind the faster we go into digital transformation. So I do agree with everything that you said. And like I said, this is my opinion.
Thank you, Ricky.
Hi, I'd like to just jump in real quick. My name is Micah McLean, and I work at the Louisville Metro Housing Authority at the Parkway Place Housing Development. And I feel like the pandemic has really been like an unveiling of all the inequities, and nothing more apparent than when we started NTI instruction. And it was a struggle. Well, a lot of our families did have internet access and they did have devices because we've been operating our Connect Home program here for a couple of years. But, there were a lot of people who didn't know how to submit the assignments. didn't know how to do the Zoom with the teachers. And it was difficult for them to navigate that whole process and trying to, some families had to go ahead and get hard copies of instruction because it was just too difficult. And what concerns me is that, with this new normal, we may start August with more NTI instruction. So people who probably got behind in these past 6 weeks will continue to be behind. And that's what worries me the most, is that, it's increasing that divide between families that have and families that don't have. And maybe it's something, I'm not sure.
Sorry, this is Maggie again, and I did, as you weren't quite finished yet. That is one of the things as a vocational rehabilitation counselor. I do work with some high school students in the transitional stages, and I feel like either the teachers don't connect as much with the students as they probably could or should, but then that leaves parents or guardians to have to be more of an instructor to these students. And so these parents or guardians aren't necessarily equipped, and it's very sad. And you're right. So even if they give it a shot to be a teacher, they don't necessarily provide that instruction that the students will need to be successful.
And I think also the unforgotten element is that a lot of our parents are essential workers, fast food workers, people who never stopped going to work during this pandemic. And so, they're not at home to be on top of the instruction. The kids are doing it by themselves, or they're doing it with grandparents, or the grandparents are the ones that are raising them, and they're not really equipped to do the NTI instruction. I really worry that, it's going to increase the divide between the children at school, and just, I don't know. I don't even know how to begin to even wrap my head around that. But if anybody has any thoughts or ideas about that.
And just to
This is
piggyback you, Micah, there were also, my fear is that there were a lot of children who did nothing, have not done any schoolwork since March, for all the reasons that you named. Parents, maybe on that same level, parents are not technically inclined, parents are not in control, because I know I talk to a lot of students and young people in the community, and they just did not and were not doing the work. So that's my worry and concern, is like, where will they be when it does start, whether it's TI again or if it's, in the classroom.
Well, maybe, maybe
this
there's
is
an opportunity.
Martin Lindsay, I do have a couple of suggestions of how we might be able to put our heads together. First thoughts is maybe me and Ray Don talk all the time, that we can put our heads, perhaps maybe even Ricky Santiago's department might be helpful in this. And since we know some of those community issues on kids who aren't being supervised during the day, for those parents who never stop working, maybe putting our heads together on some community-based putting our heads together on some solutions that we think might be effective, and again, maybe pulling in our classmates to be some of those stopgap resources going ahead into what we know is going to be an issue going into the next school year, especially for those kids we know that whatever percentage that was, we're doing nothing the entire time.
So I've heard, we actually worked side by side with JCPS on the deployment of the computers, and after the computers were deployed, we started hearing a lot of stories just like the ones you're saying, and I was catching a lot of them, because a lot of people were complaining that just one device per household is not enough. if you have multiple children, if you have, they have to share the computer. If essentially the problem with NTI, and this is some of the feedback that we've gotten from organizations that are working actively on NTI, is is that the parent becomes the teacher, and some parents are just simply just not equipped to just do that, right? It's very challenging, right? Because if you have this knowledge gap in technology between the parents and then the child, it can be a very wide breadth to try to close that.
And that's what I was.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. You can go ahead. I'll wait.
I was just, it's Maggie again, and that's kind of what I was alluding to a moment ago, was that unfortunately we have parents that either have the same level of education as the child that's being, taught, or not the education needed to educate the child. And so that's the problem. And some of the students, they need special technology or special equipment hooked onto a computer because, for example, they may not be able to talk, or whatever the disability may warrant.
Yeah.
So that adds even more complications.
Yeah, what you're referring to is adaptive technologies. It's very, very common from the engineering world and the need that's been applied also, and we're seeing it evolve into the IT world as well. I think we could keep our heads together to put some practical some of those families intimately. I think that we within with our Tech Louisville classmates, I think we can begin to start helping to address some of those issues before it scales out of control in the way that Ricky and Joe mentioned.
Well, most of the students that I serve, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so most of the students I serve are seniors, juniors and seniors, and they're moving on. And typically they are considered what's potentially eligible. So we don't necessarily go ahead and start their services until they're, finishing up, literally transitioning into either college or the workforce. But I mean, we're dealing with them, and we need them to be able to be successful that last year or two so that we can. And we do have a rehab technology department that can do assessments and help figure out what kinds of equipment are needed for our clients. But it's also helpful if we know what they've been using in school or can have that and start working with it then too. So I guess that's where I'm coming from.
Hey, if I may chime in real quick, and I apologize, but I do have a 7:15 Zoom meeting. And so I definitely want to be respectful to that. And I just want to say thank you all for this invite. Minority Mental Health Project is definitely ready to align with any partners that's going to address all these gaps, not only the gaps in when it comes to mental health, but holistically. We're ready to align with any of you all in terms of even teaching the basic computer skills. This is why we're here. And I'm going to throw this quick statistics out real quick. Over 84% of psychology workforce in the United States, over 84% are white. Under 4% is 4% that are African American. Less than 1% are Black men. This initiative is badly needed for the community. Our board, 11 board members are Black. All of our clinicians are Black. I'm Black. So this is an all-Black organization that's looking to address the gaps in the research when it comes to services for our underserved communities. We solicit your support. We thank you all. We appreciate you all. Robert, definitely pass along my information. Whatever you need, email www.mmhplou.com. And I really appreciate the invite to share what we have in store for our community. And thank you all.
Thank you, Damon.
Thanks. Yeah, and I understand that, time is running short. I just want to be respectful of everybody's time. But once again, thank you, Damon. Leave. You know, you can log out if you want to continue to stay in dialogue and conversation. I know, Chad, I know you had a question or a concern. I can see you over there itching.
Yeah,
And
yes.
Miss Deborah made a very valid statement in the chat, which I'll share for those who cannot see it. It says some of the teachers in JCPS were not equipped to provide or coordinate NTIs. So it's just not families. It's overall, because I know that for myself by being a former JCPS student. I mean, not only student, but also teacher for JCPS. You'd be surprised a lot of teachers are not equipped, especially when you have a lot of predominantly white female teachers that don't have the best interest for a lot of our students. Now, I'm not speaking on behalf of Kentuckiana Works or Tech Louisville. I'm speaking on this for as of Robert Moore, as someone who's been in the school system with JCPS, and JCPS has failed Black men within the city of Louisville. It's not the streets that has put a majority of our Black men in prison or dead. A lot of these school systems, especially with JCPS, have institutionalized our children, our Black men, in the prison industrial system. And I know for one, by me being a Black male in JCPS, by trying to put me in special ed classes, and not only that, but I worked as a EBT special ed teacher, and I saw the games they played to put our children of color into those special classes. So if you have any, I know I was just ranting on that, but is it something? Thank you for pointing that out. I just had to.
I have something to say.
Let me speak to that as well.
Okay.
Go ahead, Chad.
So my question is what is the city looking like as far as utilizing the community centers? I think that there's an extreme disconnect as far as the local community centers. I didn't, when I was at Kentucky and Works and I read through the Workforce Innovation Act, like I noticed that in the policy it had churches everywhere, but a lot of kids, and I'm speaking from people in my generation, we didn't grow up in the church. We grew up in the community centers, and I feel like it's an extreme disconnect from the community centers and putting services in the community centers. I feel like even with the COVID thing, you could utilize the community centers as a way to still practice social distancing and then still allow kids from the community to partake in schoolwork.
You know what? That's a question that I have myself. I don't know what Parks is doing. I can't speak for Parks, but I can't tell you what I am willing to do. We have a bunch of desktops, and they have computers in their locations that may just need some sort of adoption, right? Can something like Tech Louisville adopting a lab per community center and just kind of working it that way. And if there's a community center that doesn't have a computer lab, we can put some in there. But we can do that. Those are things that we can do. It's just a matter of coordination.
And then, Chad, last year, Louisville had a major budget shortfall. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the community centers were scheduled to be closed because of the mayor's shortfall. And so with COVID, I think everybody who have been supported by Metro government's budget, they're just waiting to hear if they're going to be open or not. So, that's been an ongoing, it was an issue last year, and there were some other centers that were scheduled to be closed this year, along with neighborhood places. So, we're just waiting to see what's going to happen once we are supposedly back up and running, in this new normal. So, but I think that's a great idea, utilizing community centers, because I even wrote that down to even bring that to Damon. So, that's a great idea.
Just to hop in real quick, is David. With that same budget that the city had, they ended up finding $4 million at the end of extra surplus, and they didn't do nothing but send that to their golf courses and other stuff that they wanted to allocate it to. So it has to be a joint venture within them too, to also want to put those money inside of the community centers to rebuild them instead of closing all of them.
Thanks.
Rakai, did you want to follow up or state your question?
Yes, it's hard to say which angle to attack this problem from because there's so many different. It's a multifaceted problem. So one, the difference of whether it be in the church or the community center to offer services. There's been many times that the services, free computer classes, the churches and the community centers, and no one would show up. Part of that is for us to find a way to get creative to get the parents more involved, not only for the sake of their education, as we see they were forced in some instances to be their children's teachers right now, is to find a way to get them more involved, to get them to understand more about tech, and to force their kids to get involved. That becomes also part of the problem, where you have some of the other districts like I'd spent 19 years as a JCPS teacher. I haven't taught in JCPS for 2 years now. And for the prior 3 years before I left, I was teaching in Google Classroom. So it can be done by those who are willing to do it. There's a lot of teachers who are just not willing to do it. They don't know enough about it. So they're going to stick to doing what it is that they do. Right, wrong, or indifferent, they're going to do what they do. They close the door of their classroom and some of them pass out worksheets. Some of them dress up like, characters. They're going to teach how they teach. And until there's a push, not only from us outside of that industry and in the tech industry, to get them to embrace more things in the tech world, to be more engaging and get, we say these kids can't do it, but all these kids in elementary school, they got iPhone 11s and, and they all got PlayStations and Xboxes. This whole time during NTI, they could have got on Google Classroom through their PlayStation and Xboxes, but they didn't choose to. Or their parents weren't involved enough to really check behind them and make sure that the work was getting done. Summer schools are full right now of kids who've been telling their parents for the last 3 months, yeah, I did all my work. We didn't get any work. And they ain't done nothing. So that's a whole different problem that, that not something necessarily we can solve from a hardware software program. That's a different type of problem altogether. My kids actually go to school out of town. My kids go to school in Eminence, Kentucky. Long story of why they go to school down there, but their superintendent was so forward thinking that several years back, he went to a one-to-one model with all the kids. So all the kids so everyone middle school and above has a MacBook Air, and elementary kids, 2nd grade to 6th grade, 5th grade, have a Chromebook. He took every one of the school buses for the district and put a Wi-Fi hotspot on it. And at night, instead of parking them on the compound, they parked them at different strategic locations around the city to make sure the kids that live in certain neighborhoods have. We don't live down there, we live here in Louisville, but it was a concerted effort to involve tech in the kids' lives in a certain way. I don't know what that would take to happen, but maybe a push from folks like us on this call and others to JCPS to make some things happen like that could spark some change.
I love that. I really connect with everything you just shared there, Rakai. And I don't want to kind of like go down like a rabbit hole in regards to like a lot of the ideas that I have, because like I get very like excited about the possibility of impact and change and being a disruptor for good. I believe in disruption for good. But there has to be, I mean, if there has never been more of an alarming sound, like it is now the time for true educational reform. And what it has to do, it has to find itself, it has to lend itself to be in a vein that travels directly towards workforce development, and maybe even loops back around to how we can find ways to create some level of like alternative income for parents to skill themselves in certain areas that impact their children. So like I don't want to get into like the ideology of it all, like, but because I got a ton in my head. But it's that time, because online learning is here. It is never going backwards. Like, let's not even think of it as such. And so let's think about like what you just stated, with so many kids that maybe don't read at the state level or perform math at the state level, but they do TikTok at an international level, like, you know, as if they're like, you know, just they could be competing against the globe, or they play, you know, Xbox at a level where they can hop on Twitch right now and compete for some type of trophy. We have to harness that actual, like, that commitment to like those tools and find ways to educate through those vehicles, and then create opportunity or showcase the opportunity that where it can lend itself towards actual like job earnings. Because the days where we just telling kids put up video games is not worth it, those are over, because now they're offering collegiate scholarships for video games. People are getting paid to game, like through e-gaming. People are getting paid a lot of money. We have some black kids to work in the video game capacity, they can get paid a lot of money. So let's not deter them, but let's find a way to disrupt the educational as it stands today. So, but offer up like these really great solutions, these creative solutions that could lend itself towards like workforce development. And then, like I said, find a way to loop back in to like engaging parents and what maybe they their skills to connect with their kids.
Hey, Ricky, you mentioned gaming and that industry. There is a organization here called Louisville Makes Games, and some of our creative peers are actively involved in that organization. So that is something that it might be more easy to implement than we think. I think that's something that could be jumped on pretty quickly, actually, if somebody had a coherent concept of how to do so. We have those resources in the city, though.
But I just kind of go back to what Kai was saying. The bus idea, it's great. It's actually been brought up multiple times here in the city. Not just school buses, but maybe TARC buses, right? When the COVID was at its highest peak, to park TARC buses with Wi-Fi somewhere else. I can't share that has been kind of thrown around. The problem here is we probably have a little bigger city than we can properly cover with buses, and the buses have to be turned on. They have to be on because the Wi-Fi gets the power from the bus. So those are two things that we weren't just able to get around. But it was thrown out. I don't know if maybe with a little bit of encouragement from the community that could be brought back up. I will say though that in addition to the buses, we can also create a mesh Wi-Fi network. Right?
Yes,
so
absolutely. That has been brought up in this city a million times too.
Encouraging families that do have Wi-Fi, like maybe we have a list of volunteers, and we show them how to create a guest network, but like open it up. That's what I've been saying about the census. They bring me in a lot of the census is like one of the things that, what can we do as a neighbor? It's like open up your Wi-Fi so that your neighbor can use it. That's been one of the main things. And then the other point I wanted to kind of go back is about the computer classes and people not showing up. You're absolutely correct about that. There is a culture component to this, and that's why I speak on digital inclusion. being the sum of all its parts, right? Because if you give families a computer and don't give them internet, you're just giving them furniture.
Yeah.
If you give families connectivity via internet and you don't give them a computer, you're giving them a bill they may not need. And then if you give them both of them without the skills to properly use them, then it just becomes Facebook, Netflix, right? Instead culture piece to this. How do we elevate digital inclusion to be that third third or fourth need in the hierarchy, right? Like housing, food, water and electricity, digital inclusion, right? Not just talking about just internet access, we're talking about digital inclusion as a whole. That there's a culture component there that I just don't think it's there. And I've been swimming upstream trying to figure out how to turn it into a culture piece, but I just haven't been able to figure it out. So yeah, you're absolutely right. When families do come and say, well, why do I need this for when I have a phone? And it's one of those things where if you're in need, you probably don't know you're in need, right? Like I don't know if you guys have heard that before. And then families that are in need, they make choices based on the options that they have. And then if their options are limited, then the choices are going to be limited too.
I did have an actual question in regards to resources available, because I got a chance to really speak with Kentucky Passes and Actions Coalition. And ultimately what they were trying to find was the resources to assist in a need right now. Due to the COVID-19 circumstance, we see that schools have shut down, libraries have shut down, and there's still requirements for children to get work done. The reality of it is just what you're talking about, the insecurity in terms of technology and access. Well, what they were looking for was who to speak with in terms of helping them open up their churches during this, since the churches have been able to reopen and the libraries haven't, to where they can help accommodate young people re-entering those MTI programs and trying to complete them or start them. They actually have the numbers of 10,000 who never began, and really attempt to put some opportunity for them to complete these things, because even after COVID is over, we do recognize that who did their work and who didn't is going to be an issue, as well as they're going to be held accountable. We also don't hear any options for summer school right now, and we realize that some of the young people are still going to need activities. There's no talks about summer jobs yet. Nothing's opening. So the churches are saying that they are willing. The question is, who can actually partner with them while they can provide the location?
I have a question. Why hasn't, seeing that this is the tech field, why hasn't the use of apps being on phones been utilized? Like I can literally log on to my prep class or my prep course and do work literally walking down the street. I'm not for sure if the city has a concerted effort of trying to roll out some kind of applications to help the kids, because you see TikTok and my niece is always on TikTok. So
I can't speak on JCPS. I know that applications are something that we consider a lot. Like from the city side, like you can have the 311 application. There's the Louis Connect application for services, but I don't know about JCPS. But I do agree with you that apps are important. However, the issue with apps and mobile devices. So in digital inclusion, we don't consider mobile devices only equitable access to technology. Meaning, like if our families are behind the digital divide, they probably have what they colloquially call the Obama phone, right? And these are lower end phones with not very good memory. So designing apps with that mindset that they can work offline, right? and that they're a light version. That's something that we need developers to consider, right? So, yeah, that's what I can say.
Okay, thanks.
And I think I'm going to log off. I left my information on the chat. It has been absolutely wonderful to speak with you all. I've been wanting to have a conversation like this for a very long time. I just didn't know how to get started. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Ray, for the invitation. You know, I am here to serve the city. I'm here to serve you all. If you all have an idea, if you all have an organization that you work with that I may be able to help with, reach out to me. You know, I'm here to help you empower the city, right? But we can't do it alone. We got to do it collectively. So it's been my pleasure to be here. I hope to hear from you all very soon, actually. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ricky.
All right, thank you.
So
Thank you, Ricky.
I guess some people are logging off. So I guess this is the end of of today's discussion. I know that we've done this in the past. COVID, and this is a new way of doing a community discussion with technology within the tech world, and hopefully we can start something up next month through Zoom, presumably, to continue on this conversation. Thank you all. Be safe. Appreciate you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
And good night.
All right, thanks. All right, good night.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.